Hey y'all, Daniel Aaron here, your guide to vibrant living, and I know if you know Bali immigration or immigration departments in countries where there is corruption, a love story is an unlikely pairing. And this is a true story, an accurate story. I've realized about myself I am more a novelist than a haiku writer, so I will do my best to take a big story and make it very concise for you. I promise it'll be worth it. Nearly 2 years ago, the last major event I led in Bali. Huge training, well, relatively huge, maybe 70 people including staff. Incredible, we were off to an amazing start. It was a little shaky before we got going because there were some threats from the immigration department. However, we had the top immigration agent in all of Bali who was above board, who could get legal permits for all of our teachers. We paid a lot of money for those permits. So he assured us that no matter what, we were safe. 5th day of the training, we were on fire. It was going so well. People had broken through. It was amazing. I'm in the middle of a meeting with my staff, and someone passes me the phone and says, "Look at this." It says, "There are 4 immigration officers in the parking lot looking for Daniel." Not the text I wanted to read. Here's the first lesson that I got. Very powerful learning for me. Perhaps, I'm sure, useful for you. So we continue with the meeting, finish the meeting off, everybody heads off to do their thing, and I say, okay, what am I going to do? Realize that I am afraid. What state am I in? Fear. Because I don't want to get carted off by the immigration department, least of all without my immigration agent, kind of like a lawyer. And if I'm going to have to deal with them for interrogation, because surely that's what's coming. I'd been there many times before. I had dealt with this department many times. I had tried righteous indignation and being honest and proper. That didn't go well at all. Eventually I learned to play the game, to smile politely, to say, perhaps I could make a donation, which sort of worked, but as you may know, when those kind of donations are made, that increases the desire for more of such donations. So, I realized, time for me to apply some of my own teachings. If I am in a state that is not resourceful, in this case fear, first thing I gotta do is change my state. So I do that. I go outside and do a little quick process for myself, and as soon as I do, I realize, hey, there are 2 parking lots. So if they're looking for me, they're going to be in the front parking lot. Meanwhile, my bicycle, how I'd got there, is in the side parking lot. So I get on my bicycle, head off. Great. Call up my visa agent. He says, yeah, we better go down there. I said, okay, I'll meet you there. So I go down there. Spend hours and hours waiting. That's part of the game. And my agent says to me, we haven't done anything wrong, everything's fine. They're saying that there's, a little problem, but I'll get it worked out. But they want you to stay here. What do you mean, stay here? Stay here. They want you to stay overnight. Like, stay overnight? It's not a hotel. He's like, yeah, there's a immigration jail. And I know of several people, expats, tourists even, who had been put in that immigration jail. And once it happens, there is no due process. You could be there or devolve from there without any power. So I was not into that. Plus, my daughter, who at the time was 9 years old, is back at the center where we're leading the training. In fact, she was on the training as a raw chef trainee, and she graduated. So I'm thinking, this is not going to work. I can't do this. I can't get put in jail. So I'm trying to figure things out. Meanwhile, we're waiting. Finally, we get pulled in for the interrogation. I do my best to be kind, patient. I pretend that I don't speak Indonesian. I let everything get translated through my agent. Finally, as we go along, they say that the problem is that there isn't a stamp in my passport. And I say, you're implying that I haven't left and that's what's wrong? And they're saying, well, yeah, that's what, and clearly I had left and I had my plane tickets, and I showed them my plane tickets, and that some countries outside of Indonesia don't do the stamp anymore, and that's why there's no stamp. And they're saying, no, no, no. And finally I lost my yogic patience, and I was like, come on, obviously you're just harassing me. When I did that, there was a young immigration agent there. He puffed up. As soon as I got a little bit of anger, he had anger. So that didn't help my chances. Anyway, concluded, and I go and I get emails that show my whereabouts and my flights and all that, and they were used, and I show that to him. Does no good. So we're still there, and by now it's like 5 in the afternoon. We've been there all day. And my poor immigration agent, he's sweating bullets at this point. He's so worried. They're just harassing him. And you can imagine the office is so dense there, and the cigarette smoke, and it's so dirty. You don't ever want to go to the bathroom in there. Anyway, at a certain point, I step outside and make some calls. I call the consulate. The consulate says, well, unless you're actually in jail, there's nothing we can do. I'm like, but if I'm in jail, then I can't call you. I'm like, yeah, that's a problem. So finally, I'm sitting there outside, like, what am I going to do about this? And I realize I'm standing outside, no one's paying any attention. I'm out of here. So I get in my car and I drive back. It's like an hour and a half to get back to the center where we were leading the training. And as soon as I get out, great relief. And then I know that I'm going to have to deal with it at some point. They're going to come back after me, though I figure, at least I'm going to find out some more resources, get some more information. There's got to be a way to deal with this. This is not right for me to be railroaded and put in jail unfairly. At that point, I didn't know about how many other people had that happen to them and how bad it could get. I didn't actually know at that point. I should have been even more scared. Anyway, on my way home, my visa agent calls me and he says, Daniel, where are you? Well, I'm not there. He's like, can you come back? I was like, I don't really want to come back. He's like, well, we have to deal with it. I'm like, yeah, but you know what, it's not right. I don't want to get put in jail. He says, yeah, but if you don't come back, they're gonna keep me there. Immediately I was just like, oh man, that's not fair. So okay, I'll come back. So I go home to the center, get my daughter set up for a sleepover, right, and then I drive back. And as it happens, a good friend of mine had just popped into Bali, hadn't seen him in years, had called me up. He's like, hey, let's get together. So, poor guy, I call him up and I was like, hey, David, I've got a weird adventure tonight. You want to come along? He's like, sure. So we go down to immigration. We get there probably at like 8 p.m. Now, mind you, the immigration office closes at 4 or 5 in the afternoon. We get there. There are at least 6 officers still working. And I realize after a few minutes, because they tell us to wait, I realize immediately that the whole office is open still because they want to get me. I have some theories as to why, but it doesn't really matter at this point. Anyway, so David and I sit there, and for like 2 hours, we catch up and talk. Meanwhile, my visa agent, still sweating bullets over here, can't do anything, just have to wait. And he is really sure that they're going to keep me in jail. And I'm meanwhile just praying and sure that that is not right, that's not going to happen. Eventually I call the consulate office again, and a little more urgency in my voice. Now they call the consulate officer at home at this point. He said, well, let me, why do they want you to stay overnight? I don't know, it's an island, they have my passport, it's not like I can leave. I'm like, yeah, clearly it's, some kind of harassment, power struggle, I don't know. So he says, well, why don't you let me talk to the immigration officer, the guy in charge. Now, the guy in charge I've never talked to. He's like, I've talked to this guy who was really scary. He deported 2 of my employees, and there's nothing I could do about it. It was the worst day of my life as far as work has ever gone. I couldn't protect them, I couldn't help them, they had done nothing wrong. In any case, everybody knew this top guy was super scary. So when the consulate officer said, let me talk to him, I said, well, great, that would be wonderful, please talk to him. Then I realized, like, I can't give the guy my phone, because as soon as they do that, then they might take the phone and, dig and fabricate information. And so, the only solution seems to be that I get his phone number and have the consulate officer call him. So I hang up and say, okay, I'll do that. So I say to my visa agent, Pak Sujono, would you go and get his phone number so I can give it to the consulate? Sujono looks at me and is like, can you do it? I'm thinking, oh man, we paid you so much money, you're supposed to deal with this, but I get it, I understand, you're scared, okay, fine. So by this point, the big boss is sitting on the rundown sofa watching Balinese cartoons on the TV. I can't make this up. So I go over to talk to him to get his phone number, right? How odd is this? I'm asking him for his phone number. So I go over there and, he looks up at me. He's sitting on the sofa. So imagine this. He's sitting on the sofa and I'm standing here. So, I'm like, taller than him at this point because he's sitting. And so I start talking to him, doing my best, polite Indonesian at this point. And then I realize, like, I feel awkward standing up here and he's down here. I always like to look at people, eye to eye, same level. So, which is easy because I'm not that tall. And so I kind of come down on one knee, so I'm at the same height as him. And I'm explaining a little bit further. I say, I need your phone number. And he looks at me, he's like, why do you need my phone number? I said, well, the consulate officer would like to speak to you. And so we're talking, and then he does something amazing. He looks at me, and he looks over, he sees that I'm kneeling on the floor, and he's sitting on what I could only describe as a love seat, right? It's the kind of sofa that just has the space for two butts. So he's on one over here, and he looks at me, and he pats the seat next to him, right? You know that little thing like, come sit here? He does that. So this was an amazing moment for me because, well, one, how could I refuse him? Two, scary! This guy is scary, like powerful, dark, mean. Everybody that works there is afraid of him. And the only solution is for me to sit next to him. So I stand up and I sit on the sofa right next to him. Our heads are like this far apart. And then he says, why does he want my phone number? I was like, well, he wants to talk to you. He says, what does he want to talk to me about? I said, I don't know. I think maybe you better ask him that. So my only hope at this point is that is a little bit, that there's some accountability for the immigration officer at this point. Miraculously, he reaches in his pocket, he pulls out 3 cell phones, and then he gives me the phone number to one of them. I pull out my phone, trying to keep it private, type in his phone number like that, and I say, oh, okay, thank you. So then I go back to my seat next to David, next to the immigration agent, and I call up the consulate guy, give him the phone number. Another hour passes, then I can hear his phone ring, I hear them have a conversation. Finally, at 10:30 at night, maybe 11, he comes to me and he says, you can go, but you have to be here tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. At this point, I'm like, okay, fine, yes, an hour and a half drive each way. Thank you, understand, yes, I'll be here. Visa agent, yes, he'll be here with me. We go. All right, that's the first part of the love story. That to me, miraculous event. And because what happened when he patted the seat, when I sat next to him, there was this sweetness to him, this moment of, we're the same. This is just what you do with another human being. It was so shocking and surprising and beautiful. Anyway, I'll tell you one more piece because there's one more bit of shocking love coming here. And I drive home. I get home past midnight. Thank goodness my daughter's all taken care of. She's having fun. Or she's asleep at that point, but she had a good night. And I get home and I'm just wrecked. I had a full day of this harassment, this awful thing. And it's scary, even though, I feel like, I know we've done things right, we're above board, it's all legal, but still, it's just something that I was scared with that thing, I don't know what could happen. And so I get home, and the only thing for me to do, well, first I check in with my staff, everything's going okay on the training, they're doing well, good job, everybody, and then I pray, and for the next several hours, that's all I do is pray. Well, maybe not several hours, I was wiped out, but for probably an hour and a half, I just pray, like, help me to navigate this. And then I wake up early, pray some more, and then I wake up, this thing comes to me, and I say, well, what am I here for? What's this training for? What is this situation? If this is all, what's the test here? What's the challenge for me? And I thought, you know what? I'm looking out for myself, right? That's all I cared about at immigration. Sure, it's, partially so I can be there for my staff and the trainees, but it's also like, I don't want to be put in jail. And also because, I have a responsibility to my daughter, and if I'm not there, but still, I think, I didn't care at all about those immigration officers there. I didn't care about them. So I made a resolve. I said to myself, I'm going to, when I go there today, this is the next morning, I'm going to go in and be of service. Whatever that means, I don't know what that means, but I'm going to be light. I'm going to be love. I'm going to support. I'm going to help them. Right? That was my intention. So I get there at 7. The office isn't even open. Right? A few of the guys are outside playing football, American soccer, and so I sit outside and wait with my immigration officer. We're sitting on the step for about an hour. Finally, they open the office. They let us in, and guys start to trickle in, the officers, this and that. They're all joking around. We're just sitting there waiting. None of the bosses are there. They just tell us we have to wait for them. And then, this is the amazing point, and I'm just sitting there waiting, and I'm breathing practice. I did my writing practice sitting in there. I did some meditation in there. I'm sitting in lotus in the chair. I'm like, I'm going to make the best of this. I'm going to transmit light. I'm going to be of service, doing my best to stay positive, going outside to the bushes to pee when I had to. I'm not going in that bathroom. And then this moment comes when remember I told you about the guy who had kind of opposed me the day before. He got angry, and it was kind of scary. He is across the room, and he makes this gesture to me, and he's like pointing like this. I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. And we're doing this little sign language thing, and he points again. I'm like, I don't know. And then he reaches down. I can't make this up either. He reaches down, and there is this plastic wrapped Danish, and he lifts it up and he hands it to me, and he's like, and he's saying, do you want a Danish? Do you want some breakfast? It was so sweet. It was so beautiful. And once again, I thought, here I am. What have I done for these people? And this guy is offering me something. So sweet. So I said, no, thank you. I don't want that thing. Thank you, very sweet of you. And a couple of minutes later, he walks by, and so I figure, why not do the same thing? I was like, hey. We start talking a little bit. I was like, do you want to sit down here? And he sits down next to me, and I'm sitting in lotus, and he started asking me about yoga and this and that. And no kidding, for the next half hour, maybe 45 minutes, he tells me his life story. He grew up in Jakarta, which, if you don't know, it's on a different island, big city, kind of a scary city, dirty city, and he was a street kid. He was in a lot of trouble, and he ended up leaving his family home at like age 11, living on the street. Tough place. In fights all the time. He joined a gang, and then he got kicked out of the gang, and fights and fighting people and crime. And that was his preparation in some way for the immigration department. And he said, now he does his job, which is intimidating and threatening, but he doesn't have physical violence anymore, and he's doing his best. And and I know he is born into a corrupt system, and he had to pay a bunch of money, in fact, to get that job. He had to bribe his way into a job where he then has to bribe other people, or get bribes from other people. Right? It's not his fault. He's doing the best he could with what he had. And that half an hour, 45 minutes of us sitting together there was beautiful. You know, we really connected, and we spoke Indonesian the whole time, and I understood most of what he said, not everything, and you know, and it was just something really sweet. And you know, then a little while later, the big boss came in, and then you know, my friend kind of straightened up and did his job, and then we had a full day there again of interrogation. And in the end, they did not put me into jail. They did deport me, but though not permanently. So the next day, my daughter and I had to leave the island to go to Singapore. And it was several days before we could come back in. And then our visa agent had to make a sizable donation, which he did on his own. And we were able to I missed something like 9 days of the training, which was so hard for me, though such an incredible blessing. And this is the last part I'll tell you for now. It was such a blessing because the people that worked with me were such high caliber people. James and Amanda and Bucky and Erica and several others, many others. They're just such high caliber people, and we'd been working together, and they'd been training so much on this, and we had systems built, and they did an incredible job. Not only did they keep it going while I was away, they moved it along. Things got better, and you know, and I talked to them every day, but man, I had such respect for them and appreciation. And you know, if I had any success as a leader, it is that somehow we had created a system that didn't depend on me. It was beautiful. So, as painful and yucky and kind of horrific as the experience was, it was also beautiful. I got so many lessons, 2 beautiful little love stories in the midst of that, and a great, beautiful gift from my friends and staff. So it's one of those ones that I didn't want to be in the midst of it. I wouldn't choose it again. I won't work in Bali again because it just got too dangerous for me. I don't want to be under that kind of threat all the time. And I'm really grateful for it. As well, I'm really grateful for you for tuning in, for listening. And if you got questions or comments, feel free to leave them here in the section below, and I will respond. Thanks, y'all. Once again, Daniel Aaron. See you later.